Welcome to a Cuz Bad Guys Tactical Breakdown. In this video, we're going to go over Starfire, or Princess Korra. This model, I believe, is the new 52 version of Starfire, so also the same version that is with the Outlaws, which is Jason Todd, or the Red Hood, and Arsenal, so the sidekick for Green Arrow. And let's get right on into our character card. Alright, so as you can see, she is a free agent with affiliation Batman. She has affinity Roy Harper, so she is also able to go into a Green Arrow crew as long as you have Roy Harper or Arsenal included in the crew. Let's go ahead and go into her weapons. She has a Fire Blast, which is triple blood, rate of fire 2, ammo 2, beam, which is wounds on a 2+, gives a -2 modifier to any blink saves, as well as it's not a firearm, so that means this will go through bulletproof vests. It's also medium range, so 40 centimeters, but remember you can only see 30 centimeters unless the guy that you're targeting is under the effect of light, so 30 centimeter range. It also has crit fire, so if you roll a 6 on your collateral dice, you get to put a fire marker on your target. So you light him on fire, and he has to spend 2 action counters at the beginning of his next activation just to put the fire out, but he takes a blood at the beginning of his activation, so no matter what, he's taking a blood of damage and he's losing 2 counters. And if they choose not to spend the 2 counters and just take the blood, at the end of their activation they get another fire marker, so the beginning of their next activation they take 2 blood, and it just keeps stacking and stacking and stacking until they die, which is pretty mean. Let's go over her stats. So she's willpower 7, which is high end for a free agent. She is strength 2, movement 3, attack 4, defense 4, endurance 6, special 3. So strength 2+, that is amazing. It means she's going to run up to people and punch them and be doing damage on a 2+. She is a monster in close combat. Movement 3, that's pretty good for a free agent. Attack and defense 4, which is pretty standard for a free agent. It's kind of what you want, but we'll go more over that when we get to her cost. And then she's endurance 6, which is pretty standard for free agents, but we'll also go over that with her cost. It's kind of low end for what I would want for her. So let's go over to her personal traits, and we'll start off with Fly. So Fly is you spend a move and a special, and you give up your base movement to be able to move 30 centimeters in any direction. So that means you can stay on the ground floor, you can stay in the street, and just move 30 centimeters. It's not like the Bat Claw where you have to do a vertical change. It just makes her really quick. Fly High. So Fly High is a move and 3 special, and you get to remove her from the board, and then at the beginning of the next turn, you get to put her anywhere on the board that her base will fit. This is a great ability. Essentially, the way I use this is I'll fly her up in a turn. The next turn, I'll fire blast somebody and then fly high. So she can't be retaliated against, and then she gets to go anywhere on the board on the beginning of the next turn. So on to the next ability, Hover. Hover is you spend a single movement counter, and it makes it so when people try to punch you in close combat, you get hit on 6s instead of on your defense. There is a catch to this, though, that if you ever receive a knockdown or a knockout or become pinned down, you automatically take 2 blood because it's like you fall out of the sky and hit the ground, and then take any other damage that you would normally, and you lose the hover counter. You also can't receive any ping rolls when you're in hover, so you can't hide behind a car or any kind of cover when you're flying around. Next is invulnerability 2. So invulnerability is a really good rule, which makes you, first of all, it makes you immune to crit casualty. So that means Black Manta's Death Ray and Ra's al Ghul's sword, they can't cut you down with a critical hit of a 6. Which is awesome. Invulnerability also makes it so you get to ignore the first number of damage, which in this case is going to be 2, and you just straight up ignore it. So essentially she has an upgraded Kevlar vest, which is pretty awesome. Makes her pretty durable, but you don't want to have her be targeted by too many things in a single turn because it's only the first 2 damage in any turn. Next is Lantern. So Lantern is if you spend a single special counter, you can cause light to be in a bubble around you for 5 centimeters. It also lights you up so other enemies on the board can see you. This makes sense for her to have because she's Starfire and can burst into flame. Her next personal trait is Reinforced Gloves. So instead of doing the single stun in damage in close combat, she gets to do 2. So that puts her on par with Batman and Bane and guys like that. Her next ability is Safe Hands, which I think the only reason why they gave her Safe Hands is so someone like Catwoman or anybody else with Thief can't run up to her and steal her Fire Blast, because it's like a natural ability for her. You can't just like steal that from her. Then she has True Love Dick Grayson. So if Dick Grayson is ever included in the crew or the team that she's on, if he dies, she gets a +1 to her attack. So her attack will go to 5, and she gets +1 to willpower. So her willpower will go from 7 to 8. This like almost never happens. It's really, really rare to see this happen because first of all, Dick Grayson, he like doesn't go down. He's pretty beast. I've never had it happen in any of the times that I've taken a Teen Titans crew, but that's kind of rare. I usually take her in an Outlaws crew, so I'll run Teen Titans, but I'll run Red Hood and Arsenal instead of Dick Grayson because I like the Outlaw team just from reading the comics and stuff. All right, so let's go over her point cost. So her reputation is 130. So 130 is super duper steep, but you have to figure in that she has invulnerability. So as long as she's going up against a single henchman at a time, kind of doesn't matter who she runs into at that point. If it's just like some lowly henchman that's like 30 points or something, she's essentially going to beat him down and not take any damage in return. But you've got to make sure to not put her in really sketchy situations because as soon as she starts taking a ton of hits, it gets really bad really fast because she's only endurance 6. For 130 points, you can get guys like Batman, you can get guys like Lobo and one of the versions of Deathstroke that have much better stat lines, but also figuring in that she has fly and fly high makes her very maneuverable, so she can like get away from those situations. It's kind of give or take. It also depends on what kind of team or crew you're running, because the next point cost, her funding also goes into how she adds to a crew. And next is funding, which is surprisingly it's zero funding because she has a ranged weapon. So she has her fire blast, and normally ranged weapons cost funding. But for her, for some reason, she doesn't cost any funding. So that means she frees up that money for you so you can take more guns. But she essentially is paying that funding cost in her reputation, like in her points. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there. All right, so let's go over her strengths and weaknesses. So first, her strengths. So her strengths, I think, would be her strength 2 plus, because she's an alien princess from another planet that can burst into flames. She can wound people on a 2 plus. Total monster, super awesome. She will wreck people that she punches. That, along with her invulnerability, as long as you go after a single henchman at a time, you don't get surrounded and beat down. She's really, really good at that. Just make sure that you don't overextend her. Her weaknesses, her biggest weakness, I think, is her endurance 6. With that invulnerability, you would think that endurance 6 would go far away, but it really doesn't. All it takes is that lucky hit to get a double with her hovering. She ends up falling down, takes 2 blood, which can straight up just take away her invulnerability, and then she gets beat down. It's happened a few times to me. So how do I use her in crews? So I take her in 2 different types of crews. So I take her in Outlaws, which I run Red Hood and Arsenal and Damian Wayne for 350 points reputation. And the other is a Batman crew that I essentially take all of the SWAT members. I take as many guns as possible just to back her up. And then I essentially use her as a hawk. She flies around and takes out the straggling henchmen, any of the wounded free agents, or anybody that essentially is a threat. And then if she ever gets stuck in a sticky situation, I use Fly High. At the beginning of the activation, I'll fire blast somebody and then fly high and get her out of there. I'll also use her as my model to turn on the bat signal, but you've got to get the timing on this done. You don't want to just do it turn 1. Usually your opponent will leave a character back to go back and turn it off, or to contest against Starfire from being able to turn the bat signal on and get those victory points. You want to wait until he kind of abandons the bat signal, and then go and flip it on with your Fly High, and you time it with doing the fire blast and right in the middle of the game. And this is my paint job that I did for Starfire. I tried to stick to the new 52 paint scheme. I also changed her jewels to be white because I thought it would be a really good look on the purple. I'm really happy with the way her oranges and reds came out. The blending to them took quite a long time, but I think it was totally worth it to get this kind of a paint job on this model. Thanks for watching, and remember, 'cause bad guys.